بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم اللهم افتح علينا بركتك وانشر علينا رحمتك بقوتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah today we continue this series of lectures that we started about the life of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. And in the last lecture we talked about a little bit of the background of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's family, and we also talked about Islam in Senegal in general, but briefly. So we talked about how by the year 1040 Islam started to spread in Fouta and the areas of Tekrur. And we also talked about Qadi Ammar and before him the situation of the Muslims before him and the situation of the Muslims after him. And we talked a little bit about the political environment of the wall of states like Jolof, Baol, and Kajor. And we also talked about the migration of the Mbake family from Fouta. And we mentioned that one of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's grandfathers, Muhammad al-Khair, and some sources call him Uthman Ba. It was the first one to migrate from the lands of Fouta to Jolof. And we also talked about the lineage of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and we talked about some of his grandfathers and a little bit of their life. And we talked about Mam Mahram, we talked about Mam Bala Aisha, we talked about Mamor Anta Sali, and we also talked a little bit about his mother, Mam Jara Buso. All of that just to give you a perspective of the environment in which Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba grew up in. So today we will talk about Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba himself, and we will go back a little bit into Mamor Anta Sali's life, because Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba grew up with Mamor Anta Sali, his father. So Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was born in Khurumbake. So a lot of people, they say Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was born in Mbake Bawol, but actually he wasn't born in Mbake Bawol per se, but he was born in a village school that Mamor Anta Sali built near Mbake Bawol. That's where Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was born in 1853. Some sources say differ, but he was born in the early 1850s, 1851, 52, 53, 54. They have different accounts, but the most famous or mainstream one is 1853. And he was the fourth child of Mamor Anta Sali. Mamor Anta Sali had many other children, and he was also the second son of his mom, Mam Jara Buso. He has a brother from he has a brother with with whom he shares the same mom, Mam Jara Buso, and he's more known as Mamor Jara. Mamor Jara. And when the Sheikh was born, Muhammad Bashir Mbake, in his book, he wrote a book on the biography of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. He mentions that when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was a young boy, people started noticing like odd behaviors that he would display when he was young. And he said that some of the people who used to take care of him, they noticed that every time they would have Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba as a baby on their back, because they used to what they call bot. And every time someone would carry him and walk somewhere that people would do haram stuff, like for example beating the drums and dancing and stuff like that, or wrestling, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba as a young kid, he would start to, be agitated and act as if like he was bothered by the environment that he was being taken to. And when he would be, people would carry him in a different place, he would stop doing that. So they started to notice early on in his life when he was young, very behaviors that people would look at as if, this was odd or weird. That's why Muhammad Bashir said that the Sheikh was khuliqa rabbaniyan. He was created, and from early on in his life, he was a Rabbani, meaning a man of God. And just like the tradition of his family and the tradition of the Muslim clerics and their families in Senegal, he started learning the Quran at the age of 7. At the age of 7, that's usually when they started, when they would bring the kids to the Quranic school, and that's when they would start learning the Quran. But the Sheikh, he did not go to like specific schools. His family and the environment in which he grew up in, his own family and his father's friends and colleagues, they were learned scholars, and among them there were many Quranic teachers. So that's why Mamour Anta Sali gave him to his uncle Muhammad Buso, and he is the one who started teaching him the Quran. And then Muhammad Buso gave him to Tafsir Makindumbe, his grand uncle, who taught Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba the bulk of his learning. And when Tafsir Makindumbe passed away, he returned to his father Mamour Anta Sali, and Muhammad Lamin Job Dagana says that some people mentioned to him that when the Sheikh, when Tafsir Makindumbe passed away and he returned to his father, he reached Latajidadna, which is in Surat Ma'idah. Latajidadna. So when Tafsir Makindumbe passed away, he was learning, some sources say by himself. He would learn by himself, because when people learn the Quran and they reach those surahs, they can start learning by themselves. They can start learning and just recite by themselves. So he would do that. And he was with his father all the time. And when he finished his Quranic education, by that time, that's when Maba started his jihad. And Maba started his jihad in the early 1860s. And by that time, he conquered many of the cities in Jolof, Kajor, Bawal. And he started gathering the Muslims who are living in those cities, because he feared that the Chedo, the non-Muslims, would retaliate on the Muslims. So he gathered many of them, and by that time the Sheikh finished his Quranic education. And by 1865, Maba gathered a lot of all of them, and among them was Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's family, Mamour Anta Sali's family. And in Salum, that's where he started learning Islamic knowledge. That's when he started learning Islamic knowledge. And Salum, when Maba gathered all of the Muslims in Salum, Salum became a very great intellectual environment for Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, because Maba gathered all of the greatest scholars and teachers and clerics who were living in Kajor and Jolof, and he gathered all of them in Salum. So the Sheikh didn't need to travel somewhere, didn't need to travel to any village to learn knowledge. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed that at that time, when he reached the age of learning Islam, Maba gathered all of the great clerics and the great teachers who were in Jalaf and Kajor, and all of them were gathered in Salum. So that's when he started learning. And his father, Mamour Anta Sali, he was well known, and many of the great scholars who were living at that time, they were close friends with Mamour Anta Sali. So that's when he was initiated to the Islamic sciences like fiqh, jurisprudence, and nahu, which is Arabic grammar, lugha, which is linguistic, and hadith, tafsir, sirah, and also mysticism, tasawwuf, and poetry and balagha, which is rhetoric. So he studied with his father first. He studied like the mabadi, like the sciences and the subjects that the children who were initiated into learning Islam and having Islamic education, he started those sciences and he learned them with his father. And then he studied fiqh and tawheed with a great friend of his father and a great scholar and cleric, Samud Glorka. With Samud Glorka, he started learning fiqh and aqidah, tawheed. And he also studied poetry or arud with Qadi Majahatakala. And like I mentioned in the past lecture, Qadi Majahatakala was one of the greatest scholars and grammarian and poets at that time, and he was heavily involved with the court of Kajor. He used to be the judge in Kajor, and he was heavily influenced. He was heavily involved in politics and government and stuff like that. So some sources say that he did not learn a specific book with Qadi Majahatakala, but Qadi Majahatakala would give him like some assignments to write something and then come back and show him, and he would give him like show him some secrets and some ways to do poetry and to write poems, to the point where every time Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba would come with a poem, and at that time he mastered the art of poetry. Whenever he would show Khadim Majahatakala a poem, Khadim Majahatakala would say, give it to me so I memorize it for you, but don't give it to me for me to correct it. Meaning that at this point you mastered this art, so you can write for your own self. This doesn't need correction. It actually needs people to memorize it. And in Salum, he was introduced to Sufism or Tasawwuf or mysticism, and he was probably influenced. Sorry, he was probably influenced by Samba Tukulorka, who was a head of the Qadiri branch in Senegal. So he was a muqaddam. A muqaddam is somebody who has the authority to initiate people in a tariqah and give them a wird. That's a muqaddam. So he was a muqaddam, and he was very, very influenced by those people. And Samba Tukulorka was one of the scholars whom Maba gathered and brought to Salum. And at that time, you remember I said in the past lecture that Lat Jor was overturned from the kingdom in Kajor, and he sought refuge in Salum. And when he came to Salum, people wouldn't accept him being in Salum unless he converted to Islam. So he converted to Islam, and a lot of people who were with him also converted to Islam. And a lot of people doubted his faith, and that's why even Khadim Jakhtakala, in one of his poems, he will say that Asadiqun fi idda'i ad-din lajjoru am hammuhu fi dhalika kajoru. Is Lat Jor truthful about him claiming faith, or is his intent is to gain back Kajor, to just have people help him to gain back Kajor? And in that poem, he described the things that happened between the French colonial administration and Kajor that led to Kajor being overturned. That led to Lat Jor being overturned from the kingdom. And by the year 1875, there was somebody from the lands of Fouta by the name of Ahmadou Cheikh. By the the year 1875, he was from he was from Fouta, and he intended to do jihad with the Wolof states, Jolof, Bawol, Kajor, Salum. He intended to do jihad with them because he thought that these people, a lot of them, they were not Muslims, so he should do jihad with them and convert them to Islam. And when that conspiracy started to spread, a lot of the Muslims, including Lat Jor, who was in Salem at that time, but they wanted to fight they wanted to fight Ahmadou Cheikh, because these people were already Muslims. He doesn't need to do jihad with them and convert them to Islam. And Lat Jor actually received the help of the French colony, the administration. They helped Lat Jor fight Ahmadou Cheikh, because for the French colonial administration, they thought that the people from Fouta, they didn't have much control over the people of Fouta, because they were all Muslims. They didn't have any Cheddo over there. They were all Muslims. They didn't have any control over them. The only control they had was they had the control on the Wolof states. And actually, when they colonized Senegal, they were the one who appointed leaders in those Wolof states. So to them, the strategy they used was, we're gonna help these people, even though they were against Lat Jor. They helped him fight Ahmadou Cheikh. Right? They helped him fight Ahmadou Cheikh, and then after that, they gave him back the kingdom of Kajor, because they had an agreement in peace treaty with the French administration. So, and that was by the year 1875, and Lat Jor went back to Kajor. And 3 years later, Mamor Anta Sali also joined Lat Jor. And Mamor Anta Sali, just like we mentioned in the past lecture, he did not like to be fully involved with the government and politics and stuff like that. But he saw that him, with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have blessed him with being a scholar and having knowledge and being from a very prestigious family, and he had a lot of authority. He saw that it was very beneficial for him to judge people and to help people and also call people to Islam. So that's why when he was in Salem and Lajor was in Salem, they built friendship. And Lajor used to love him so much, and that's why he went back to Kajor to join Lajor. And when Lajor was regained the kingdom, 3 years later he joined him. And Lajor at that time, he was in Kër Amadou Yalla. That was his headquarters. But when Mamour Anta Sali returned, joined him to Kajor, he didn't live with him in the same village. He was living in Patar, and that's where he stayed, and he continued teaching over there. At the same time, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba stayed in Salum. He did not join his father when his father went to Patar. He stayed in Salum and continued his studies. He went to Salum and continued his studies. And the Sheikh returned to Salum when he was a little bit over 20. When the Sheikh was a little bit over 20, in his early 20s, that's when he returned to Kajor to join his father. And he continued studying, but by himself. When he was in Kajor, when he was in Salem, he had a lot of scholars who was there that he could learn from. But when he went back to Kajor, he was learning by himself. He continued learning by himself. And he, just like I said earlier, he did not follow the tradition of what they call in Wolof lakhas, meaning traveling to seek knowledge. That's why when he went back to Kajor, that intensified his thirst for knowledge. He always loved to read by himself and learn things by himself. And when he went back to Kajor, that's when he studied some sciences that he did not learn, like rhetoric, balagha, and logic. And he used to study those two from a Moorish scholar who came from Mauritania, and his name was Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Karim, or Muhammad al-Yadali, as he was known back then from common people. And Muhammad al-Yadali used to reside in a village called Njany, and that was in Kajor. When his father was in Kajor, he used to go to that village and study with Muhammad al-Yadali. And he continued to study like that, and he also built a lot of relationship with Muslim families, and he started to travel in Jolof, Kajor, and the villages around there that was said to have, Muslim families and Muslim clerics and stuff like that. And he used to go to Longor and visit a library that was in there. There was a library in Kajor near Luga, modern day Luga, and there was a big library over there, and he used to travel there and read in that library. And some sources mention that he used to also travel to Koki, Dare Koki, and he also used to travel to Pir, because at that time Pir had a big library. And he continued to study, and that's when he started to emerge as a new, knowledgeable teacher. and he went back to Kajor to his father, and he started teaching and being the assistant of his father, and he started teaching in his father's school. And it is said that some the sheikh was very clever, and he was a very good teacher, and he had more patience than his father, because he some that's why some students, it is said that some students, they preferred studying with Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba rather than studying with Mamour Anta Sali, because Mamour Anta Sali, being a judge, he didn't have much time, and he didn't have the patience with students that were slower, that used to learn slow. He would always like give people their lesson once, and just expect them to work the rest on them by themselves. But Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was more patient, because he, at that time, he wasn't a judge. He didn't have like all these. He wasn't involved in all those political stuff that his father was involved in. So he had more patience teaching the students. So that's why a lot of the students of Mamour Anta Sali started learning with Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. And when Mamour Anta Sali saw that, he was actually happy about that his son is actually taking over a task that he was supposed to undertake. And that's around that time, and at that stage of his life, that's when he started writing books. And originally he started versifying classical books on theology, jurisprudence, and mysticism. And when you see the bulk of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's writing that pertains to Islamic sciences, all of them is about theology, jurisprudence, and mysticism, and Tasawwuf, Sufism. Because at that time, a lot of books were available, a lot of classical books were available, and what he used to do was he would take a matan, a textbook, for example, on Islamic theology or jurisprudence or mysticism, and he would versify it. He would put it into poetry. And at that time, around this time, he wrote Mawahib al-Quddus. And Mawahib al-Quddus is a book on theology, and it's a versification of Barahin, which is a textbook on Ash'ari theology. And he versified it. And he also versified the book of Imam al-Ghazali called Bidayatul Hidayah. And he versified it and called it Mulayyin al-Sudur. And later on, he rewrote the book Mulayyin al-Sudur, and he rewrote it and called it Munawwir al-Sudur. So that's the one that is more famous. Munawwir al-Sudur is more famous than Mulayyin al-Sudur, because he rewrote Mulayyin al-Sudur. And Mulayyin al-Sudur is about mysticism, Tasawwuf. And he also wrote Jawhar al-Nafis, which is a versification of Imam al-Akhdari's book on fiqh, on the Maliki jurisprudence. And you hear Lakhdari in Senegal. It's a very famous book. Al-Jawhar al-Nafis is a versification of Lakhdari. So that's what he was doing. And Mamour Anta Sali was so proud of his son that he used to replace some of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's book and put it and include it on the program, because he was so proud of what Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was doing. So he would take one book that Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba versified and include it in the program, or even replace it with the book that they was learning. Like, for example, when he wrote Mawahib al-Quddus, people stopped learning Munawwir, people stopped learning Barahin and started learning Mawahib al-Quddus. And Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was so clever that sometimes Mahmoud Antasali would have some some students that were to come, and he would teach some students that wanted to learn a specific book that Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba did not learn yet. Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba did not learn those books yet. But when Mahmoud Antasali knew that there were some students that were to come, he would teach Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba that book. For when the other students come, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba would teach them those books. That's how clever Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was when he was learning. And later on, when in his mid-20s, he started to get married, and he followed the tradition of his fathers and his forefathers, which is marrying from prestigious Muslim families, and families that had the reputation of being, ethical and pious, and have a history of learning and memorizing the Quran. So that was the tradition of the Mecca family. They would only marry from Muslim families that have a history of being a family of scholars, and a family of memorizing the Quran, and a family of having Islamic ethics. And when he started getting married, in the Wolof tradition, when you start to get married and have children, that's when you start to have like authority. That's how you establish authority. And him having a great education, he started more and more to emerge as a cleric, and he started to gain more recognition from people, because not only he was Mahmoud Antasali's son, but he was very, very knowledgeable. He mastered a lot of sciences that were being taught at that time. And at that time, he started to feel a lot of inclination towards mysticism. And sources mention that around this time he started meditating more and more. He started to seclude himself and meditate. And it is said that he used to meditate at a place called Gigis Bamba. Now they call it Gigis Bamba. It's a tree that he used to sit and meditate. And around this time, he started to have to build his reputation and have like his signature appearance. And that's when he started to adopt the all white outfit, with the Moroccan jalabe and the cape, and a pants, a turban. And when he would wear his turban, he would cover all his face except his eyes. So that's why you see that in the picture, and that was the only picture that was known of him. And that picture was taken by one of the colonial administrators in Jurbel, in his mosque in Jurbel, after the prayer of Asr. And that was the only picture that was known of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba until like a year ago. There was like 3 pictures that came out and created a lot of controversies. When I saw those pictures, I did not doubt that was Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. So, because those 3 pictures reflect who he was. And even when you study Muhammad Lamin Diop Dagana's book, Hirwa Nadim, when he was talking about the building of the Mosque of Njarem, all those descriptions that Muhammad Lamin Diop Dagana said fit exactly the scenery of the scenario of those 3 pictures. And Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba people would only see Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba's full face when, after every prayer, he would make dua for the people, and then he would take off his turban and spit saliva on the hands of the people he's making dua for. And Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was very slim. He was very slim, but he was also a very strong person. And many of the sources mention how he rarely got sick. He rarely got sick, and even though he was very slim, but he was also very very strong because he adopted the diet of the Sufis, and um, the people who wrote about his biography, they never mention him. Even the colonial sources, the archives, they don't mention him being they never mention him being seriously ill. And Muhammad Limjor Dagana actually mentioned once he was sick but not seriously ill, and it was at the time when he was in exile in Gabon, and there were people around him like the officers, the army, the army soldiers and stuff like that, who were around him, and they were partying and singing, dancing and smoking, and he was a little bit sick, and he made dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take his sickness and befall it on the people who were bothering him. And Muhammad Lamjab Dagana mentioned that when the Sheikh made the dua, the following weeks they stopped doing that. They all fell sick. So that was one of the rarest occasions that the people who wrote about his biography mentioned that he fell sick. And just like we mentioned, he was very slim because he adopted the diet of the Sufis, meaning not eating too much, because in all spiritual paths, whether it's Islamic Sufism or spirituality in general, even in Buddhism, they one of their teachings is like eating too much and always satisfying your hunger can hinder your path to enlightenment. So that was one of the spiritual exercises that the Sufis would adopt, meaning eating less. And even some sources mention that his favorite food was cherry. He used to like eating cherry. And he used to enjoy also people's company. The Sheikh, even though he was a very serious, intimidating person, and I'm going to talk about that later, but he used to enjoy people's company, and he used to love also tea. He used to love tea. He used to sit and drink tea. And when he would make tea, he would make it by himself, and he would serve people by himself. And he even wrote some poetry about tea. And he used to wear like leather sandals, and he also had a beard. He also had a beard, and some sources mention that he would cut his beard sometime and make it short, and some people say that he had a very long beard, but he would cover it with his turban. And he also did not like disciples doing stuff for him. He did not like when disciples would rush and do something for him, like for example going and putting his prayer mat or just grabbing something for him. He did not like that. He would do everything by himself, and he would not ask nobody for any favor, even though like he was a Sufi and people that they knew that he was a Sufi. He did not like material stuff, but even with that, he did not like to ask favors from people. And he did not like also to engage in vain talks, and that was very very serious for him. In the Wolof tradition, they have like this custom of doing like very long greetings, like barikalla and si jamu naka wa kër ga this and that. Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba used to cut people off like salaam alaikum wa alaikum salam, not less, not more. He used to cut people off from that, and that was very very serious. Actually, Sheikh Ahmad Zarruq says that one of the worst thing that the tongue can do is engaging in vain talks and asking, when you greet people, asking how is so and so and how is so and so, because that opened the door for backbiting and gossiping and stuff like that. So he was very serious about talks about that. People, they like to engage like in vain talks, so he would always cut people off when they start to engage in vain talks. And he would also speak for himself. You know, like how sometimes you see some people, they speak very low and you have somebody next to them listening and repeating that he didn't used to do that. Just like Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, he used to speak for himself, and he used to speak very, very clearly and loud. Sometimes when he would teach, when he would sit and teach, he would have like this the sand. He would teach on the sand and put like dots. That's how he would teach. And sometimes he would repeat things like more and more and more, so that people understood it. That's when he would teach. But when he would give a command, he would give it once. He would not repeat himself when he gave a command, because he was very, very intimidating. People describe him as being very intimidating. And when he would give a command, he would only give it once, and people never dare change his mind. And he, being a Sufi, he had something called al-azm or azima, determination. When he knew that he was right, or he was making the right decision, or he did istikhara to Allah, and he have a good feeling that this is a right decision, you cannot change his mind. He had great azima. So that's some of the descriptions that people mention about Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. And just like I mentioned, he was living with his father until his father passed away in 1883. And when his father passed away, just like I mentioned in the past lecture, before his father passed away, he gave him a lot of advice. And after his father passed away, he was one of the people who accompanied, the people who were taking him to his grave in Dakhla. And Muhammad Lamin Diop Dagana mentions that he was walking with the people, and every time somebody would offer him to ride a horse, he would say, "No, I would rather walk with my own feet." And when they went to Dakhla, after they buried, when they went to Dakhla, a great cleric from the notable families of Kajor, who was his comrade and his schoolmate, he was a schoolmate of Mamour Anta Sali, by the name of Mandumbe Marsal. He was one of the notables of Kajor, and a very learned man, and he learned with Mamour Anta Sali in Kajor. They were close friends and schoolmates and comrades. So Mandumbe Marsal led the janaza, meaning he prayed over his body. And when he finished praying over his body, after they buried Mamour Anta Sali, he read some eulogies for Mamour Anta Sali, and then he said, "Where is Bamba?" That's how they used to call him when he was young, Bamba. And when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba went to him, Mandumbe Marsal told him to get closer so that he could speak to him directly. And the Sheikh didn't want to go over people's shoulders, stepping over people's shoulders. So he stayed a little bit far, and he told him, "I can hear everything that you're saying." And Mandumbe Marsal, gave his condolences to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and told him, "Now you know that your father was a friend and an assistant to Kajor, to Lajor, so why don't you come with us? We will take you to Lajor, and he will put you in the same position that your father was in. Your father was in." When Mandumbe Marsal asked him that, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba said that, "I appreciate the condolences and your good intention, but I don't have no intention in mingling with these kings, and I don't have any desire of what they have. I don't have no desire of their wealth. I don't have no desire of whatever they have. I'm sufficient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the only thing that I want. And when he said that a lot of people were confused about that, because a lot of people got angry because in the wall of tradition, it is not proper for a young man to speak when there's a lot of older people present, and it was not also desirable for a young man to, contest when somebody asks a favor from you and you just reply and you tell them no or something like that. And also, it was a funeral, so a lot of people, they didn't like the fact that Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba would refuse, in that state. But Muhammad Lamin Diop Dagana says that in that gathering there were two types of people. There were the scholars who knew about Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba and who knew Islamic ethics, and those people, they knew that Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was very special about. They knew that Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was very special with that response, and he had like a vision, and he had a great vision beyond whatever these people are talking about. And there were other people who were the common people who were saying that this person must be a fool. Why would he refuse all of that? Why would he refuse, a position that would guarantee him fame and fortune? And that's why later on he wrote that he wrote two poems. One of them started with قالوا سفيه لصرفي عنهم بصري ورغبتي عن ذوي العصيان والضرر. They said, they accused me of being a fool because I didn't have no desire to engage and mingle with the people of disobedience and the people of harm. And the other poem started with قالوا ليركن لأبواب السلاطين تحوز جوائز تغني كل ما حين فقلت حسبي ربي واكتفيت به ولست راضيا غير العلم والدين. They said to me, lean and incline towards the doors of the rulers, of the sultans, of the rulers. If you do it, you will have great material wealth that will suffice you forever. And I said to them that I don't have no need into that, and I'm sufficient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough for me, and the only thing that that pleases me is ilm and deen, knowledge and deen. So at a very young age, being in his early 30s, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba had this resentment towards worldly materials and also worldly positions and all of that, and politics in general. And he told his son Muhammad Bashir, and he mentions it in his book, that when he was in Kajor, and when he was in Kajor at the time where when Lajor had power and there was a lot of tension going on, he saw people from respected Muslim families just killed for political reasons. And he said that when he saw things like that, that's when he lost all interest in politics, and that's when he started having a lot of resentment with politics and stuff like that. So that's how he responded to that that incident. They wanted him to go with Lajor and have the position that his father had, to be a judge and be involved in politics and stuff like that, but he refused. And that's when later on in his life, and that was around that time, just after his father passed away. Sorry. right after his father passed away, that's when he started his spiritual quest. He traveled in the cities in Senegal and visited a lot of people, visited a lot of scholars, and sources differ from they differ about the length of that journey that he took. Some say 1 month, some say 2, and some sources say 8 months. 8 months. So he started to travel in the cities, in the holy cities in Senegal, and he also started visit the tombs of the saints that were buried around Senegal, and he went to Saint Louis. During this trip, he visited a lot of scholars. He visited their libraries, and he asked them. He asked questions and recommendation on fiqh, tasawwuf, and all of that. And he also received a lot of ijaza. Ijaza means a license or something that shows that this person learned from me, or this person received such and such from me. And just like I said, he visited a lot of saints and tombs, and his intention was to go all the way to Mauritania, Boutelimi, but he passed by Saint Louis, and in Saint Louis there was a great scholar by the name of Al-Hajj Kamara, and he was a muqaddam of the Qadiri Tariqa. And I told you earlier what a muqaddam is. A muqaddam is somebody who has the authority to initiate people in a tariqa, or to give them wird and ijaza. So when he visited Al-Hajj Kamara in Saint Louis, Al-Hajj Kamara tested his knowledge and his level and his learning and stuff like that. And when he recognized that this Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was a great knowledgeable person and somebody who had sainthood in him, he gave him ijaza. And gave him the position of a muqaddam. He gave him ijaza and gave him the position of a muqaddam in the Qadiri Tariqa, meaning the Sheikh could initiate people in the Qadiri Tariqa, and he could also give the wird of the Qadiri Tariqa. And that was not the first time Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was initiated in the Qadiri Tariqa. He was actually initiated in the Qadiri Tariqa 4 times, by his father himself, and also by his uncle Muhammad Bousso, and by his uncle Muhammad Bousso, and by Samba Dukulor Kap, and by Sheikh Sidi Baba. Later on, by Sheikh Sidi Baba. When he was in Salum, he was introduced to the Qadiri Tariqa. He was already introduced to the Qadiri Tariqa, but he had the position of being a muqaddam when he went to Saint Louis and visited Al-Hajj Kamara. And Al-Hajj Kamara, rahmatullahi alayhi, he gave him a turban and a cane, the stick that they hold, and a turban to represent his status. And then he proceeded to Boutelimi. And in Boutelimi, the family of Sheikh Sidi Baba was living in Boutelimi here. The family of Sheikh Sidi Baba. And in Boutelimi, the family of Sheikh Sidi Baba were the Sheikh Sidi Baba's grandfather, Sheikh Sidi Baba al-Kabir. His name is Sidi al-Kabir. He was the founder of that branch of Qadiriyya, and they have the silsila, or the chain, the chain of wird. The wird, they have a chain that goes all the way back to the Prophet. So Sidi Baba's grandfather is the one who gave it to his father, and Sheikh Sidi Baba was the head of that branch in Boutelimi. And some sources said that he was very young at that time. Some sources mentioned that he was around 22, in his early 20s. But despite his young age, he was very knowledgeable and very responsible, and he was the head of that branch. And Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, when he was with here with Sheikh Sidi Baba, that's when he was more and more introduced to the Qadiri Tariqa and received also more ijazat, and he received more ijazat. So when he was in Mauritania, in the village of Sheikh Sidi Baba, that experience really affected his life and shaped the way he was thinking about life, and the vision that he had to live with mysticism in the path of Islamic mysticism, and that really changed his life. And he had access to the library and in that library he discovered many books that he did not know of and he did not learn when he was in Senegal in his learning stage. When he went to Boutelemi, he was exposed to more Islamic books and stuff like that, and he always had thirst for knowledge, and he loved reading and stuff like that. So when he was in Boutelemi, he read a lot of books that later on he versified when he came back to Senegal. When he was in Boutelemi, after receiving the wird of the Qadiri Tariqa, he wrote a poem about the silsila, meaning the chain of narration of the wird that goes all the way back to the Prophet. That's why you will see that in one of his poems, Silsilatul Qadiriyya, the silsila of the Qadiri wird. And just like I said, he had access to the library, and he learned books that later on he versified. One of them is Nahj, which is a book on Islamic ethics and manners. And he versified a book by Ad-Dalhaji, which is a short textbook, and he also added stuff to it. And he versified it for his disciples. And also at that time, he was exposed to more books on tasawwuf, and he discovered a book by Muhammad al-Yadali al-Daymani, which is Khatimatul Tasawwuf. And that book, Khatimatul Tasawwuf, later on he versified it and called it Masalikul Jinan and added more information to it. And his stay in Boutelemi, just like I said, really changed his life. But that stage of his life was very important because he was able to connect the Muslims from the Moorish Muslims with the Wolof Muslims, because the Wolof Muslims, they had a very bad reputation among the Moorish people, because they used to think that the Wolof Muslims, they were only involved in politics, and they didn't respect Islamic laws, they didn't respect Islamic manners, they didn't respect the Islamic tradition in general, they didn't respect knowledge in general. So that's the reputation that the Wolof Muslims had, and they used to call them the blacks. It's not racist, it's just a terminology. They used to call them the blacks, the Wolof Muslims. That's the reputation they had among the Moorish people. So just like I said, the Moorish Muslims did not consider the Wolof Muslims to be like good Muslims. They considered them to be like ignorant people who did not respect Islamic ethics and morals and were not that knowledgeable. But when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was there and they saw what he had, and he took everything here in the Wolof neighbors, and he brought it there, and he showed them the intellectual heritage that he received from the Wolof people. That's when he started to build that connection, to the point where later on a lot of them actually used to travel and come to the wall of states. And the Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, knowing about how the Moorish people used to look at the Wolofs, that's why he wrote in the introduction of Masalikul Jinan that ولا يسدك مدى الأزمان عن أخذه كوني من السوداني. Don't let the fact that I am from the black people, don't let that divert you or hinder you from taking this book and benefiting from it. إذ أكرم العباد عند الله أكثرهم تقى بلا اشتباه أكثرهم تقوى بلا اشتباه. Because the best and the most noble of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Allah, is the one who have more taqwa. And he says فليس يوجب سواد الجسم سفاهة الفتى وسوء الفهم. Being black, having a black skin, doesn't mean that one have wrong understanding, or doesn't mean that one is stupid and fool. So he was saying that because he was writing Masalikul Jinan, and he was versifying a book written by a Moorish scholar, and he knew about the reputation that the Wolof people, the Wolof Muslim, had in those lands, because they used to look at them as like ignorant Muslims and stuff like that. So that's why he was saying that. That being black doesn't mean you have lack of understanding. So when he came back, that's when he wrote all those books, Nahju and all of that. And when he came back, he returned to the lands of his grandfathers in Kajor, and he pursued his teachings. He was continuing teaching, and he started to have controversies with the court of Kajor, and that started when, and there are two accounts and two sources that mention different information. Some sources say that at the time of Ahmad Sheikhu in 1875, at the time of Ahmad Sheikhu, when they fought Ahmad Sheikhu, they had and they defeated Ahmad Sheikhu, and they took from the slaves, from the people that were the prisoners of war, because when you fight people and you imprison them, you can take them as slaves. So Mahmud Antasali, who was an assistant of Lajor at that time, he received from those slaves because he was an assistant of Kajor. So Lajor gave him from that spoil of war. They look at it as like spoil of war, and he had a share, and he received 2 slaves, and those slaves, they were Muslim. And at that time, when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba saw those 2 people in the yard and they were reading the Quran, he said, why are these 2 people slaves? Why are they prisoners? Why are they captured? Because they're Muslims. Because in Islam you cannot capture a Muslim. In war you cannot capture a Muslim. So when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba saw that, he said that this is not right. This is not right. So according to that narration, when that went on and spread, it reached the courtroom of Kajor, where they had like many judges and clerics, and among them was Khadim Kala, who actually issued that fatwa, and that's when they started having tension. And another account say that after the death of Mahmud Antasali, shortly after the death of Mahmud Antasali rahmatullahi alayhi, one of the cousins of Labjor, and his name was Ibrahim Akod Job, he came to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba to plead allegiance to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, like what they call Jebulu, to come to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and he converted to Islam and plead allegiance to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. But when he was pleading allegiance to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba told him that he would not accept his plea of allegiance unless he freed the slave that uh, Lat Dior captured. But this time it was a different war. It was the war of Sambasaj here. That was in 1883. That was in 1883. The war of Sambasaj. And he was from the Madinke tribe, and something happened between them and Lat Dior, and they fought, but they were Muslims. So Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba told Ibrahim Makodou Diop that he would not accept his plea of allegiance unless he free those slaves that he captured from the war of Sambasaj. So when he did that, Ibrahim Makodou Diop did that. He freed his slaves, and Ibrahim Makodou Diop was the cousin of Kajo, so he was involved in the politics and stuff like that in the government. So that reached the court. So the other account, the second one, that's what it says, and this one seems to be more accurate, because at that time in 1875, at the time of Ahmadou Cheikhou, when that war was going on, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba was in his early 20s, and at that time he was still in the learning stage. He did not have the authority to go against the courtroom of Kajor. You know, he wasn't even famous at that time. He didn't have like the establishment that would, you know, give him the courage to go against that fatwa. So the second narration seems to be more accurate, which is that the cousin of Lat Dior, Ibrahim Makodou Diop, came to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba and converted to Islam and pledged allegiance to Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba, and Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba ordered him to free the slaves that Lat Dior captured from the war of Sambasaj. Now, when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba said that reached the courtroom and all of that, and Qadi Majah Kala was the one who issued that fatwa, because when they were fighting with Sambasaj, they had a rumor that Sambasaj actually claimed to be a prophet, and based on that argument, Qadi Majah Kala said that since he claimed to be a prophet, if they fight him and capture his soldiers, they can be taken as slaves because they're not considered to be Muslim. Because if you claim to be a prophet, you cannot be if somebody claims to be a prophet, they're no longer Muslims, so they're considered apostates, and they can capture them as slaves. So that's the fatwa that Qadi Majah Kala issued. So when Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba contested that fatwa, and that went on, the courtroom started to, call him, and they sent letters to him. They sent many letters, and Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba did not respond to any of them. And when they started, perpetrating that calling, he sent them a letter. And in that letter, the letter is very, very short. After saying the Bismillah and stuff like that, he quoted Muhammad ibn Maslama, who said that a scholar who goes to the doors of the rulers is like a fly feeding from excrement. So he said that that's the letter that he sent them, and it was very, very short. So when that letter reached Qadi Majah Kala, because he knew Arabic, but Lat Dior did not know Arabic. So when he read it, he was astonished, he was surprised. And Lat Dior was like, what did he say? Did he say something crazy? He said something crazy, but I don't want to tell you. He said, no, just tell me what he said. He said that he's saying that a scholar who is serving the rulers is like a fly feeding off excrement. So Lat Dior said that, that insult is towards me, because he's considering you the fly, but he's considering me this something else. So you are the fly, but I'm the So that's how Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba dealt with that occasion, and later on, after and later on, Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba knew that Lat Dior and Khadim Jakhate traveled near his compound where he was teaching, and he went and visited them and all of that. So that's pretty much, how he dealt with all of that at that stage, and he continued with his, his routine, teaching and teaching people and being in the data and stuff like that, and that's around that time when he started founding Muridiya and started implementing some different ways of education. And we're gonna stop here, inshallah. Next time we're gonna start from there, the foundation, the founding of Muridiya, and how Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba started to change the ways of education. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Hmm?